Hey there, welcome to the Hash. It's me, Zach Seward. It's George Kalutis over there, and it's Will Foxley over there on the other side. We're your hosts today. We're going to get this thing done. We're going to get you up to speed on everything that's happening in the world of crypto today on a Tuesday. I'm going to throw it to myself. Zach, take the first story. You got it. Here it goes. We reported yesterday, based on sources, that Ray Dalio's Bridgewater Associates is making its first investment in an outside crypto fund. This is notable. Ray Dalio is certainly seen as a wise man of Wall Street by many in the world. He has come out and say that he is personally invested in Bitcoin, and most recently he said something about Ether as well. But this would be the firm itself. This would be their first commitment to investing in a crypto vehicle. Now, again, this is according to sources that Danny Nelson and Ian Allison spoke with. This is not confirmed by the firm itself, but based on what we know, this would be a small sliver of funds that Bridgewater would put into an outside vehicle, kind of similarly to how Sequoia invested in Paradigm many years ago before they launched their own dedicated crypto fund. But it could be really interesting to see Bridgewater sort of taking its first baby steps into investing in some of these crypto protocols. So I'm going to toss this straight down to Will, who is nodding his head enthusiastically. What was your thought when you saw this come out yesterday from CoinDesk?
First thought was put two hands together for Ian and Danny here. Another nice scoop. CoinDesk keeps nailing these Bridgewater stories. I don't know what you guys are doing. You have an inside guy apparently, so congrats on that. Definitely a huge story of this firm. Like, everyone knows this firm who is involved in Wall Street, even Main Street. This name has really broken out. Ray Dalio is almost a household name when it comes to investment. So him getting into Bitcoin itself was notable. The personal investments he was making, that was back in May 2021 during the Consensus conference. He told everyone that he had personally purchased Bitcoin. This is almost even more notable, seeing that the firm itself is getting into the crypto mix. The interesting thing here, of course, is that the firm itself is not holding BTC or ETH or something else on its books. It's going through a proxy by investing into a crypto company. So it's getting that exposure in the same way that we've seen BlackRock has large exposure to Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining through investments in things like Marathon or Riot blockchain. So you have that exposure, but you don't necessarily have Bitcoin on your books itself. My understanding is most companies don't want those assets on their books yet. They're waiting for more regulatory certainty. They're wondering, like, how do we audit these things properly? Like, these are obviously new financial tools. And so a lot of these larger hedge funds would rather just hold proxies that work just fine enough. They still track the underlying asset in terms of dollars. So why not just hold a proxy? So that's the interesting thing that pops out to me. I think going forward, what people should be watching for, however, is seeing more hedge funds get involved. That was the interesting story 2 summers ago when Paul Tudor Jones and a bunch of other Wall Street titans, quote unquote, jumped into Bitcoin, was that others could get involved. Now these hedge fund managers who look up to these Wall Street legends can now purchase Bitcoin, can start getting exposure to Bitcoin on their books, which of course, like, helps Bitcoin's price in the long run, but also is very healthy for the ecosystem. There's a lot of dry money on the sidelines that's waiting to get invested in Bitcoin and Bitcoin correlated stocks. They just haven't done it yet because there's not like a traditional means of doing it yet. George, I want to throw it over to you for your take.
Yeah, I love Ray Dalio, mostly because he's super good at what he does. And he also does one of the coolest sounding jobs in all of finance, right? He runs a macro hedge fund. That just like makes you sound cool no matter what. But he's also become quite the educator in this part of his life. And he has this really good educational video about the economic machine that is great. I think everyone should watch it. But he has this other one about the principles for dealing with the changing world order. And this is an idea that Ray himself is sort of obsessed with. And I think it's uncanny how many of those principles line up with some of what most of these, out there Bitcoiners say on Twitter. When it comes to the big famous investor people, it doesn't really surprise me that Ray isn't a Bitcoin hater. He doesn't really apply this like Benjamin Graham, Warren Buffett strategy of finding the undervalued companies investing. He's more of like the quant types, the Jim Simmons, the D. Shaws of the world, the Renaissances of the world, where they focus on the big picture and they go into something like Bitcoin, right? That's why this news kind of sort of surprises me. You were talking about them, investing through a company. The quote that was in the article that threw me off is that they're looking to put a small slug of their fund deployed directly into digital assets. that feels like they're going to go look for some good beta investments in crypto world, which is like, good luck, I guess. Bitcoin feels very Bridgewater. Solana doesn't really feel very Bridgewater, and something like Yearn like completely breaks my mental model for what Bridgewater is. I'm not going to lie. But one of the things I want to latch on to what you said, Will, is that, they think in dollars, and this is something that the big institutions will continue to do. Even when these guys say they're investing in gold, they're not buying gold bars and putting it under their desks. They're buying paper gold. They're trying to buy the dollar equivalent exposure to these assets. So, but seeing something like Ray Dalio get into this, it just gives a green light for these younger Tiger Cub type hedge fund investors to start diving in, because the big boss said it. Might as well get into it as well. Anyway, Zach, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think that is kind of a good metaphor there, right? This is sort of a fund, a crypto fund. What we understand it to be a pretty crypto native crypto fund that's in the process of being stood up. And Dalio and Bridgewater are throwing their support and their funding behind it to do relatively exotic things within the crypto space. That's what we understand to be happening here, and it's super notable. It's again, I go back to this metaphor, or not metaphor, but this parallel with Sequoia investing in Paradigm, right? We all know Paradigm became a huge mega force in crypto VC, investing directly in these protocols, investing in interesting decentralized applications that run in these protocols. They started off with a big check. Paradigm started off with a big check from Sequoia to do some of that due diligence, that heavy lifting for them in a way that Sequoia at the time wasn't ready to do. And so we're seeing a similar story potentially unfold here with Bridgewater and this as yet unnamed other crypto fund that is getting some of the funding and the support of Bridgewater and its top honchos. Going to be an interesting one to watch, and to see if Ray Dalio and his associates over at Bridgewater really do sort of venture down the DeFi rabbit hole in a way that's meaningful here in the future. All right, we're going to change gears here. I think I'm going to, who am I tossing it to? Am I tossing it to Will? Will, I'm tossing it to you, friend. Talk to me about Kraken. Go.
Last thought really quickly. You made me laugh thinking about Ray Dalio opening some sort of like yield token farming setup on his desktop and calling that a day. Maybe that'll happen at some point, but that was a funny image just to pop in my mind. I feel like he probably doesn't know how to use a computer super well, but let's move over to Kraken and talk about what's going on here. So Kraken is a very large US-based exchange. They're up there with the Coinbases of the world, maybe not in terms of users or volume, but definitely in terms of recognition of the name. They're also pretty large. They doubled their staff last year, and now they're looking to possibly IPO going to next year. That's been a well-discussed topic across numerous headlines. And they've recently hired a new CFO to get that done. So what does this mean in terms of exchanges? Obviously, we saw Coinbase IPO in April of 2021. That was a huge deal. Actually, it was a direct listing, not a IPO itself. But it was notable in the fact that Coinbase went live. It's now on the NASDAQ, and we had what was one of the first cryptocurrency exchanges to do so. There's been a few that have gone to minor exchanges or have been listed. They've been kind of small cap stocks. We've seen a lot of Bitcoin mining firms go public, but Coinbase going public was a big deal. And now we're seeing that other players are also following suit. When you see C-suite changes like this, especially with this, the CFO position, that can be a good indicator that a large firm like Kraken is moving towards its IPO stage. Of course, that's all speculation at this point. We don't know that for sure, but it is often a good indicator. Zach, I want to throw this one over to you. Kraken, Coinbase, I always lump those together, but what is your feel on the situation with these exchanges?
This kind of feels like the public listing that's always almost going to happen. I think we've been chasing this one for a while. Kraken has come out over the past few years and say, hey, yeah, we're going to do that too. Coinbase went public famously in April 2021, right at the peak of the bull market. The timing was rather immaculate. And I think since then, Kraken seems to be trying to find the right time to make its big splashy public debut, and that right time has not yet come to pass. So this always feels like that one that's right over the corner, but I think you're right. This might be the tea leaves that suggest that this is ramping up and is getting more serious, right? This is someone who presided over the Lending Club IPO some years ago. This is someone who is clearly experienced in bringing tech companies to the public market. So, exchanges see the opportunity here. They are becoming, again, those highly valued, that highly valued sort of intermediary layer that like most people interact with crypto finance through. So, I think whether it's FTX or Kraken, again, investors are trying to find what the Pepsi is going to be to Coinbase's Coke. And I think there's a lot of room in the exchange space for, stunning value to be accumulated by investors. And if Kraken is that next one that gets over the finish line, then so be it. But this one looks like a good signal that things are ramping up. Of course, it's speculation. Could just be its own thing, not entirely related to anything at all. I think there's a nice note in this block story about the previous CFO heading out to some unknown crypto startup. So could also just be a changing of the guard over there as well. So going to be interesting to see Kraken. Again, it's always on that public listing is always on the horizon, but hopefully we're getting closer. George, I'm going to toss it your way.
Yeah, and shout out to whenever Binance goes public for, $11 trillion of market cap, because they're the big hulking beasts. I mean, once they go public, it's going to be crazy. If they ever go public, who knows? But I agree with both of y'all. This is cool news. It opens up a path to an IPO, and it has been sort of a long time coming. Kraken's been around for a while. They've done a lot of cool things. I think they technically have a bank holding company, something interesting there. I'm not going to dive into the nuances there, mostly because I don't understand them. But these exchanges are the most valuable companies in the space, and that's really clear when you start looking at the crypto rich list. You mentioned FTX. We have SBF up there. We have CZ, who could honestly be worth $300 billion. Who even knows? But Dolan, the CFO they hired, has a pretty cool and impressive list of companies that she's worked for, including a legacy brokerage firm in Charles Schwab. Sorry about that. So this seems like a big win, especially when you consider some of the other companies she's worked for, Chevron, Lending Club, some insurance tech company whose name is escaping me right now. But these are all in industries where regulators really do like to pay attention, right? This is peer-to-peer lending, techie car insurance, oil, stonks. I mean, crypto regulators should be scared of Dolan, right? She knows the game. She knows the game better than probably the regulators themselves know it. So if this isn't a clear indication that it's going to open up to IPO or allegedly open up to an IPO listing, then I'd be surprised. I think it's coming. This is someone who has clear experience.
We're on to you, Kraken. We're on to you, Jesse. We know what's going on.
Kraken is such the cool Bitcoin maxi exchange, just in terms of persona.
Oh yeah, totally. Totally.
But then they run a huge ETH2 validator.
Image. They do, and they're big in Polkadot too. They do all sorts of crazy Polkadot stuff as well, and they're sneakily big. I was talking to someone who works at Kraken. They're like, "Yeah, we got a couple thousand employees. We're all over the place." I'm like, "What?" Anyway,
yeah.
All right,
yeah.
George, I'm excited to kick this over to you because the next story is about lasers. Tell us more.
I'm so happy that we have a mining guy here. So my story is about the never-ending Bitcoin energy story, but with a fresh, new twist. We often hear about, proof of work protocols leading to move to proof of stake to save energy, or we hear about the need to ban proof of work outright, or we can, levy some taxes. But have we thought about doing something else, like introducing lasers to improve mining machine efficiencies? Shout out to Mike Myers and Dr. Evil. There's a group of developers out there who think that optical computation, which is using lasers instead of regular transistor microchips, can decrease the amount of energy Bitcoin has to use while maintaining its security properties. And this isn't actually as off the wall as you think.
Whoa! What in the wow?
That is amazing.
I set myself up for that one. I requested
a much more handsome
the lasers
Dr. Evil, if you ask me.
I'm getting dragged for it. Thank you, Control.
I don't like that. Can we take that off the screen?
Let me never see this ever again. Thank you.
Please delete.
Anyway, this isn't as off the wall as you think. Engineers have been talking about how lasers can make computers more efficient since my dad was in school. My dad's an electrical engineer. So this theory is at least sound. And there are a lot of things at play here. And I really want to hear what Will has to say after I kind of get through the main ideas. The main idea behind moving to what's called optical proof of work, or OPAL, is that the total amount of money spent on mining Bitcoin right now is split up between operating costs, so electricity mostly, and capital expenditures, which is the machines that go into it. Right now, those costs are kind of split up evenly, but with OPAL, the capital expenditure piece of the equation would go up, since these are super sophisticated machines that largely don't exist yet. and then the electricity pool would be much lower. The idea is that it would make mining more accessible, less energy intensive, and would therefore improve the longevity of the Bitcoin network, given how hyper-focused everyone is on the energy conversation. I actually lean towards skepticism on this, but this acts as a reminder, at least to me, that Bitcoin is a living, breathing animal. And although it moves very slowly in comparison to the other cryptocurrencies from a technological perspective, it still moves. I mean, we got Taproot, guys. That allegedly does stuff. Allegedly. Anyway, I want Will's thoughts. Again, like I said, because he's the guy who lives in the mining world. He probably has some smart stuff to say about this. Take it away.
Yeah, disclosure, I work for a mining company. We have nothing to do with this, though, because it is very speculative and also still quite deep in the development stage. So right now, it's just a BIP, a Bitcoin improvement proposal. Basically, it's just, hey, what if we did this to Bitcoin? Maybe we could think of a way to make Bitcoin better on some sort of front. You don't see very many BIPs associated with mining just because that is more or less been baked into the network at this point. SHA-256 is the encryption algorithm that Bitcoin operates on top of. And we could go into a side discussion about what that is, but the main point of it is that SHA-256 is more or less not going to change unless there became a large consensus within the Bitcoin community that it was unstable or they need something else. That's where something like OPAL comes in. It's very interesting. And just like you were saying, George, it shifts everything from a capital expenditure, which is buying machines, and the operational expenditures, which is purchasing electricity, all into the CapEx side. So you're having to buy these machines that you don't really have to spend that much energy over month. That obviously helps out with the ESG concerns, but it almost just flips the question back on the CapEx side in this idea of electronic waste, which has really popped up in other areas, right? If we're going to make all these machines, you're going to be using them, and then at some point they're going to go bunk. They're just going to turn into very expensive bricks. That's a waste of resources as well. So it just shifts the question a little bit in my mind's eye. I do think that there are some interesting things about this proposal that are noteworthy. I think for one, it's interesting that they're tinkering with how Bitcoin settles transactions. That's always something that's good to think about, how do you make this Bitcoin protocol more secure? And two, the fact that you can adjust what the trust settlement layer uses for the work in proof of work is important. So the proof of work aspect, in order to settle transaction, you need to do some work to show that you're not spamming the network. If I could just send Zach 1 million transactions every second for free, pretty soon his phone wouldn't be able to it wouldn't work. There'd be too many transactions. He wouldn't be able to get through all the backlog of notifications. But if you associate some work with it, then I can only send so many transactions and he can get along with his day. Same idea here. We're just shifting the work from SHA-256, this encryption algorithm, to some sort of magical laser setup, which I don't fully understand either. It's just shifting the work. And that's, at the end of the day, a question for the Bitcoin community. Do you want to shift that work to something else? And what are the trade-offs associated with this? Zach, I want to throw it back to you and get your take on it, though.
Oh, my take, I want the odds on this. I'm gonna toss this to George. George, is this going to happen? What's the likelihood that this happens? Who are the sort of forces that are advocating for this? Who are the forces within the network who are advocating against it? Give me just a lay of the land as it relates to whether or not this thing could come to pass.
I think Will might agree with me on this. It's probably something that closely resembles zero. I would say the OGs, the powers that be in Bitcoin, are sensitive to change. And if you're going to change something that has been the pillar for what holds Bitcoin together, I doubt it happens. The people who are, the proponents of this are the people who created it, and then maybe a small subset of people. Luke Dash Jr., I think, is one of the devs who's kind of in the camp of let's do this, but you see a bunch of other devs who are like, there's just no way. There are other problems we need to deal with. I would give it something that's close to zero, but it doesn't mean that they shouldn't try, right? If I put a BIP in, it's not going to get approved either, and you don't see me trying. So good on them for trying to do something. Let's start a conversation. It's great. Bitcoin is a technology. So let's do it. But this was actually an article that I wrote for Mining Week. So you guys should go to CoinDesk.com, check out all the cool stuff we're doing here on Layer 2. We got some awesome stuff. There was a great photo essay by a couple of my colleagues. You guys should check it out. I'm sure Will would like it. Anyway, that's all we got. Zach, do your thing.
That's good stuff. Thanks for shouting that out, George. Yeah, fine work over there on the mining side. We talked about the Bitcoin mining porn yesterday on the show, George. You really missed out. We did the photo essay yesterday. Yeah, I definitely went there yesterday, so I'm just doing it again.
It's a family-friendly publication.
Sorry, kids. Earmuffs. All right. Thanks so much for watching us today. This was The Hash. I'm Zach Seward. We got Will Foxley and George Kalutis. We'll be back again tomorrow with more crypto content on your internet TV. All right. Thanks so much. Stick with us on CoinDesk.com. Go check out some mining week packages. We'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye.
Bye.